Welcome everybody on the 13th webinar of Business Markers and the first one of 2022. Today we're going to talk about strategy into action. Now I'm not alone, as you see. I'm together with my colleague Bram. Bram has been working in a lot of big companies like Duvel, Leonidas and Allen Overy. And he's not only a good kite surfer, he is now also a partner of Business Markers.
Thank you, Idas. Well, Idas Ticket started his marketing career at Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola and went on to be the general manager of MTV Networks. He then founded Business Markers to share his experience and knowledge with more companies like yourselves. He shows great balance on his subboard, but also challenges you to act now and to move forward. And his energy and enthusiasm is really contagious. Take it away, Edith.
Thank you. Some practicalities about the presentation. First of all, you have, of course, the black screen is where I am now for you. But if during the presentation we would like to ask questions, let's keep it interactive. Post your question, and at the end of the webinar, Bram and myself will answer the questions. Now, one day, when I was general manager at MTV, I was practicing and rehearsing my strategy speech. And I was doing it in my office at home, and suddenly my daughter came in the room, and she took a seat and was listening. But I continued talking, but I got curious. Hey, what is she thinking about my strategic speech? So after a while, I paused and asked her, "Hey, Kat, what do you think about that strategic plan?" She sat back, paused for a moment, and said, listening to your strategic plan is a bit like sitting in a church and listening to the priest. That was not the answer that I expected to receive. So I have been thinking about it, and I asked her, "Hey, why do you say that?" Well, she said like, I'm listening a lot, I'm hearing a lot, and I don't know exactly what you mean with it, and I'm getting a bit tired from listening to you. Interesting. Strategy is like sitting in a church and listening to a priest. If that's the case, we have an issue. So I thought further about it, and I saw that there were 3 key topics that link strategy to the church and the priest. First of all, many of us, we write strategic plans and we create a lot of slides. It's a thick PowerPoint, just like a Bible. Secondly, when we are talking about strategy, a lot of the time it's not interactive. It's not a dialogue. It's one person telling the other what to do. And that's also what's happening often in the church. So we should more engage the people in strategic planning. And thirdly, well, once you go to church, it doesn't mean that you change your daily habits afterwards. You hear a lot, you promise a lot, but are you doing? Are you practicing what is being preached? Or are you practicing what is preached? So, if we look to our plans, let's make sure that we don't go to the church, but that strategy is more like a gospel play. Haha. Okay. 3 things we have to look at, 3 solutions for strategy into action. 1, let's have not a thick Bible, but a 1-page plan. Keep it simple. Secondly, let's not have it as a monologue, but engage the team in strategic plans. And thirdly, let's make sure that we practice what we preach, that we have an agile follow-up. 3 elements we will discuss today. 3 things that are linked to a 1-page plan. 1 team, make it an 1 agile plan. And 4th element, do it in 1% of the time. You're thinking 1% of the time, what does that mean? Well, we are all working approximately 2,000 hours a year. 1,700 in reality, plus some overtime. Well, I suggest that everybody, when making a plan, takes 20 hours with his team to create a plan. 20 hours, that's about 2 to 3 days. These 2 to 3 days are crucial to make sure that the other 99% of the time you're working on the correct things, the things that will make you grow, that help you to go further. I must say that many teams do not work 2-3 days a year on their strategic plan. 2-3 days a year to think about and get energy for what you have to do during the other 99%. That's where it's all about. And to do that, there is a model. We use the model OGSM. I will explain it later on together with Bram in the presentation, but it helps to structure it. But OGSM is a model. It's more about the process to put strategy into action. And remember, there are 3 things to put strategy into action. First of all, we have to formulate our strategy. We have to make sure that we are prepared to create a plan. Secondly, we have to validate the strategy. It's about allocating our resources in the plan. Do we have the right priorities? Do we have the right budgets? Do we have the right people? And once the plan is reviewed, validated, we have to move to the 3rd phase, and that's communicating and implementing the plan. And that's the crucial one. That's where strategy really gets into action. And the model I've shown, OGSM, can be used in all 3 of them. OGSM can be used to formulate the plan, to validate the plan and allocate resources, and to implement, communicate, and make sure that we have an agile OGSM during the implementation. Now, one thing is clear. If we want to grow, and we start with the stage 1, strategy formulation, we need new growth that's only coming from new thinking. I repeat, growth comes from thinking, which means we need to prepare ourselves. If we do not prepare ourselves, we cannot create growth, we cannot create good plans. Compare it to a farmer. A farmer cannot expect crops if he does not first plant the seeds. That's important. Also for your plan, first plant the seeds and you'll get the crops. So that's what the first part of our strategic plan is going to be about, strategy formulation. Bram, can you explain a little bit more about this?
Of course. Indeed, to make a strong and ambitious strategic plan, it needs thorough preparation. You need to set the framework. You need to set the framework, first of all, of who will participate in this exercise and who will not. Will it be just internal people, or will you also have some external experts involved? You have to set the process and the timing that you want for your exercise. And of course, you have to determine the scope. The scope on the one hand, will you do this exercise for the whole organization, or will it just be for a department, or will it be just a personal project that you will be working on? Setting the scope, of course, determines the rest of your project. Scope also means how much change do you want to realize? And really, it shows your ambitions. Do you want to just run the business? Or do you want to improve the business? Or transform the business? Let's look into that in a bit more detail. If you follow the red line and you run the business, in today's changing circumstances, it's probably the beginning of the end. It's like your manual blender. It still works perfectly, but it's a bit outdated, and you're probably just a backup in someone's garage. Because somebody else followed the yellow line, and the yellow line is improving the business. Improving the business with investing in growth, in a more performant electric blender that can do the job much easier and faster. It makes the manual blender obsolete. You have more chance of success and a longer future, but there are also people who transform the business. They follow the green line. They are innovative and they are investing and probably in disruptive technology that even makes the electric blender obsolete. They've probably invented the Thermomix M6, and that can not only chop your vegetables, but also cook them at the same time. That's disruption for you, and that has a longer chance of success. That brings us to the second step of this strategy formulation track. It's the kickoff meeting. You have to explain to the people who participate what they will need to do and which preparations will be necessary, and in which timings, of course. The third step in our strategy formulation is sharing key insights. And we see that a lot of organizations focus too much on just their own organization. They fail to go outside and talk to people. And that's what we advise you. Talk to people not only inside your sector, but also outside of your sector. And get some new insights, get some more innovative ideas, some more creation, and then you'll have a much more inventive strategic plan. There are various models that we use at Business Markets to do both the outside and the inside analysis and bring that together. And one of these models that I'm sure all of you have done before is the SWOT. The strengths, the weaknesses, the trends, and the threats. These are things that we see in a lot of organizations are being used or misused. We believe that in 90% of the clients that we see, either the SWOTs are very vague or people are actually fed up in doing them because they don't see the added value. Well, we can tell you a good SWOT, a powerful SWOT, is really necessary to make a strong strategic plan. And you have to do a SWOT both on an individual level, but also bring it into a team discussion. And a good tip is to record these discussions or take some notes, because when you go back further down your strategic exercises later on, and you don't know how to make certain choices, you can come back to discussions you had about your strengths, about your weaknesses, and about the opportunities that are there in the world. We actually have a model that we use, and we call it the implementation matrix, where we actually list all of the actions and projects individually and also talk about the implications. Why is this important? We have a great team. Okay, that's an interesting strength, but what does it tell us? What does great team mean? Does it mean a lot of people? Or does it mean highly educated people? What does it mean for us if we have very well-trained and educated, innovative people, the ones that can invent the Thermomix M6? Well, that's an implication. And if you write implications for each of these individual lines, you can also go and score them, both in an individual way and then as a team, and then set your priorities. What are your 4 key strengths or weaknesses or threats or opportunities that you really want to work on and make a difference? That's one of the ways of making that SWOT a power SWOT. A second one, and that's the red thread in all our strategy into action program that we do, is the what, by, how. Think of the result and then the action needed to create that result. When we do this exercises as a preparation for our strategy formulation, we are ready to make our OGSM model. Ines, can you give us some more words about this OGSM model?
Yes, for sure. I've been working with OGSM since I started my career at Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, later on at MTV, and now last 10 years with lots of companies, I've used this model. It helps to realize plans because there are many reasons why plans never get realized. It helps it because it structures it. I did not invent it myself. It already exists from the 60s. But with business markers, we improved the model to make sure that it gets more agile, more actionable. Now, OGSM, you've heard already about it, is an acronym. It's the O, the G, the S, and the M. The O stands for objective. And objective is the bottom part, together with goals of our plan. Objective means it's our ambition, our destination, it's what we want to reach. Formulated in words. You see the pen? Every square on this paper with a pen, or in blue, is going to be described in words. Now the objective is going to be translated into goals. The goals quantify our objective. The goals mean this is our ambition, but formulated in figures. And you see the calculator and the colors red. Every element in our OGSM in red is going to be expressed in figures. So objective, or ambition in words, goals or ambition in figures. These two together bring us down to the strategies. And these strategies, these are the blocks that are needed. It shows us the way how to get the results. We're going to formulate them in words. And then you see that we move from the left to the right. Our strategies are going to be translated in measures. And there are 2 types of measures. One type of measures is coming from the verb to measure. So we talk about figures. The second measures is from the noun, taking measures. So it's our actions, or projects, or initiatives. So the OGSM model brings us on top from our destination, or ambition, or objective, down to the strategies, up to actions. What will we do to be successful? The model is not a crucial one. The process, how to get there and how to use it in an agile way, that's the most important thing. Bram, do you want to give an example?
Of course, let's put the theory into practice. I had a dream, or we as a team had a dream. We have an objective. We want to go to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. Fantastic. It's a clear point on the horizon. We want to see the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. Okay, but it's still quite vague. There are some questions that immediately arise. How will we go there, for example? Will we take a plane? Will we drive by car? Will we bike there? Or maybe we will go by foot. Well, let's decide to go by foot. We will walk to Santiago de Compostela. You see, the what, by, how already gives more direction, more meaning to your objective. It already raises some few points that we need to take into account to be able to do this project successfully. So, specify the objective, what, by, how. Okay, we want to walk to Santiago de Compostela, but how can we measure that we really arrived at our goal, at our objective? We can make 4 to 8 specific points. In this example, I've listed 4. When will we know that we've reached Santiago de Compostela? We will know if we're there on the square in front of the cathedral. There's a longitude and latitude that our GPS will verify that we have arrived. Of course, we will be walking all the way there, but we know that there might be some 10% a ferry we need to take, or maybe we want to hitch a ride on a donkey over the mountains. But 90% of the distance will be done by walking. The timing is very important. When do we want to arrive at Santiago de Compostela? Well, let's say end of next summer, more specifically the 20th of August. From a financial point of view, we've decided not to invest too much money and make sure this is a break-even project for us. Okay, so now we have determined our objective and our goal. We want to walk to Santiago de Compostela by 20th of August next year. But how specifically will we do this? How will we achieve these goals and this objective? Specifically, we need to make building blocks, strategic building blocks to get there. In this example, we will use 3. First of all, we need to be in a good physical and mental condition. Secondly, we need adequate equipment to get there. And we have to have some money to finance our trip. Again, strategy is about objectives, is about results and actions. What, by, how. To get a good condition, we need to train daily. To get good equipment, we need to go and select the equipment, test it, and acquire it. And if you want enough money, okay, we don't want to pay for it ourselves, so we need to go and find sponsoring actively. Excellent. Again, how will we know that these words are actually quantifiable and measurable? We need to put some data, some quantities into each of these strategic blocks. These are our measures. In this example, what does it mean enough money? The budget we've proposed for this exercise is 3,500 euros. And we want to have at least 70% sponsoring. At least. Our stretch target, of course, is to make it completely break even and make sure we get the full amount in sponsoring. Excellent. But which actions do we need to take specifically to get this money together? What can we do to get the sponsoring? Well, in this example, we will show 3 measures. First of all, we will contact our family and friends. We will contact our colleagues, and we will work with partnerships. Again, what, by, how? What we will do with our family and friends is that we will organize birthday parties and not ask for a bottle of wine or receive a bottle of wine, but ask them to make a donation for our trip. At work, we can set up some competitions with our colleagues and say, how many kilometers will he walk before he gets his first blisters? Or how many days will he need to give up? The third one is partnerships. Specifically, what, by, how? We need equipment, so we can talk to various brands and see if they want to sponsor and give us free shoes or backpacks or raincoats. And maybe we want to talk to the local television channel and ask if they want to finance our accommodation along the way if we make a vlog for them. This again is strategy into action. And this is how our OGSM plan is built up. Words, figures, word, figures. Results and actions. Right, so this preparation leads us now to the next step. We have our OGSM, but that doesn't mean anything. It's an actionable plan, but it's not yet action. Before anybody undertakes anything, we need to validate our project before it can be implemented. So Ines, tell us about project validation.
All right, we get into the second part of our strategy to action roadmap. And this is about making trade-offs. Making trade-offs is important in business, just like in personal life. And the strange thing is, in personal life, it's way more easier to make trade-offs. You have limited time, you have limited resources, so what you do is, how will we spend our money on traveling, or will we build a house? Will we make a kid and raise it? What will we do? So in personal life, it's easier to make trade-offs. Now in business, it's way more difficult, apparently. Trade-offs are incompatible items that we have to make choices about. When we do an OGSM, we notice that often there are like 50 projects. What can we do to make sure that we do not focus on all 50, but we choose the bears? And for those who are questioning what this little animal is, that's a bear. Making trade-offs is about making decisions. And decisions comes from Latin. Latin decisions comes from decidere. And decidere means cutting off. So literally, decisions means that we're going to decide what we will not do. Have you ever thought about that when you talk about decisions? We always think about decisions, what we will do. No. Decidere means cutting off. And the farmers understood this very well. The farmers, they are cutting off branches to enable growth for the trees. They have to decide which branch they will cut off. The low-hanging branches, the dead branches, the branches growing in the wrong directions. And by cutting off branches, they enable growth for the trees. So in business, we have to do the same. Just like in personal life, make trade-offs. What are the most important things that we will do? And that's what's happening. Because often we're adding just things on our plate and we're getting something that is indigestible. OGSM is so not about saying yes to all the things you can do, but saying no to the 100 other good ideas there are. And that's what we have to do in the second track. Allocate our budgets, allocate our people or resources in the right way, and we have to start with priority setting. Bram, want to give some more information about that?
Absolutely, Ines. Strategic plans are all about making choices. They need to be detailed enough to be actionable, but also specific enough to fit on one page. Making choices is all about hunting for bears. That's what we call it at Business Markers. And that's why this little fellow is here with us today. We hunt for bears. And when you're hunting for bears, as you know, it requires your full attention. Your full attention and focus. If not, it can become fatal. But how do you make these choices? Well, we have a model that's called the priority matrix. On the vertical axis, you see the doability. That means within our organization, how reasonable is it to fulfill this project or action? Do we have the resources and capabilities to actually implement and make these results happen? On the horizontal scale, we have the impact. And that means which impact will our project or action have on our objective? How will we change the world the way we want it with this specific project? When individual people, project people, score all of the activities or the projects, both on doability and on impact, you can plot these on the quadrants. And then together in the discussion, you can decide which home runs you want to go for. You can also have 1 or 2 big bets. But a good tip is not to have too many bears, because as you know, when you're hunting for bears, you want focus. And if there's too many bears, you'll probably have a surprise. Another tip that we can give you is be careful what you wish for. Make sure your organization is ready for the bears you're hunting today. Are we ready to hunt for that huge big bear and take the risk of our organization? Or do we need to gather some experience first and maybe go for that huge bear and dream big in 3 years' time? But make sure we have an OGSM multi-year plan and go for some more reasonable bears first. The next step in our strategy validation is, of course, ownership. Who will do what? I'm sure all of you have worked with Raski or Raki, and I'm sure, like myself, you've forgotten what is now the difference between responsibility and accountability. Well, at Business Markers, we realized that a SPICE model is probably more easier to remember. And we have, again, 5 different letters, but we have 4 quadrants. Depending on the level of control, the level of involvement, how strategic people are, and how operational people are. In the beginning, the S is for the sponsor. That's probably one senior member who is accountable for the full project and also decides on the budget that can be used. Then you have the project leader who's actually managing all the influencers, the contributors, and all the other people in the project, and reports also to the sponsor and keeps him updated on the progress. The influencers, they're not really decision-making people, but they are necessary to be consulted before and during the project. The contributors, they're the one that's doing the actual work. They're doing the analysis and the making and the working, and of course, they're being managed by the project leader. The executors, which you see outside of the quadrant, they're not really actively involved in this project, but they are using the results of the project. They will be executing what has been made. The next step in our validation is, of course, allocating the right resources. It depends on your priorities and about your company's capabilities, of course. Which human and capital capabilities do you have? And maybe you will need to have some external enforcements. The next step is all about allocating these budgets specifically and also your resource planning. When you have done your budgeting, you also have to think about scenarios. What happens if along the way I break my leg halfway to Santiago de Compostela? What's my plan B? So that's part of also your agile way of working, is making sure that when something happens that's unexpected, your plan gives you guidance and you can move on to the next step. That's why it's important, again, like you say, a lot of the plans that we see are quite vague and just in words. Quantify your objectives and your strategic blocks. Say what you want to achieve in numbers. Set your goals both individually and as a team. And use dashboarding to make sure that you can measure the progress. It motivates people and also gives you a good idea of where you are on the track. Try to use one SSOT, one single source of truth. There's no discussion on who's doing the measuring, based on what, and to make sure that the figures that are being used are correct. That brings us to the review of our full OGSM. And yes, of course, you can make a nice inspirational PowerPoint for your team or even for some external clients to show about your strategic plans. But we like to work with a digital version, an Excel version or digital version of an OGSM. It doesn't only help you to really make these words into specific actions in a detailed level, it's also a very good management tool to evaluate the process, because there we've added some columns with who does what by what timing. So it's a good way to make a detailed plan, but it's also a good management tool. And based on this, of course, your sponsor will be able to validate the project and allocate the budget. And then only we have a validated OGSM that is ready for implementation. Idis, tell us some more about the implementation of projects.
Okay. I would like to start with a poem. Hey, remember me. I'm your strategic plan. You do not call, you do not write. What am I supposed to think? Oh, sure, at the end of last year, we were great friends. We took that 2-day getaway and called it magically our strategic offsite. You showered me with time and attention. You told me how much I meant to you and said we'd always be together. You've brought me even to the annual kickoff meeting and proudly presented me to everyone. Then, a few weeks passed, and I noticed you paying less attention to me and more attention to your mails and your daily meetings. After a few months, I didn't see or hear you at all. I just sat on your shelf, dressed in a black leather binder, collecting dust. Now, it's time to work on next year's plan, and all of a sudden you're back. I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of a strategic plan. Any resemblance to reality, what happens in your organization, is purely coincidental and unintentional, but maybe highly likely. Let's be clear, strategy is not an annual event. It's a daily practice. At Business Markers, we also call it lobotomy. Organizational lobotomy. Lobotomy is cutting connections in our brains. It was progressive 100 years ago, but not anymore. We have to make sure that working and thinking is not disconnected. What we do in our daily job should be linked to our strategic plan. If our strategic plan is not connected to our daily work, we have an issue. We might as well not create a plan. So let's not go for lobotomy. Let's look into our strategy into action roadmap. In the last part, we have talk about strategy communication, about cascading the strategy and product charters, and making sure that we have an agile follow-up before making the plan for next year. Listen, the biggest driver of growth is reallocating budgets during the year. Have you ever heard that? The biggest driver of growth is reallocating budgets during the year. So your plan should be dynamic, agile, and change during the year. Let's first start with our plan and look how it can fit together with the other departments. And that I'd like to compare with a waterfall. In a waterfall, the water is going down from the top to the bottom, and it all ends up in the river. And all the water, it gets in the river and creates energy. And that's what we want with OGSM too. Even if there are different levels, even if there are obstacles in the falling period, it all moves down. And that's what we have to do. We have to look at the organization and say, we have an organizational or corporate level. We move down to a departmental level or a business unit. It can move to a team, and finally individuals. And all of these levels will have their OGSM. And it moves down. It starts with, what do we want to achieve? And if we formulate every time deeper, what do we want to achieve? From bottom up, we can help by saying, how do we want to achieve this? And that's where the people in the field really are engaged in creating the plan. At the end, the outcome is that everybody sees his or her value, how he or she will contribute to the organization. That's what we should do with the plan. Now, another way is, if you're in a smaller team, is translating the last column of our OGSM into project charters. I'm not going into detail, but remember there are 10 critical questions to ask yourself when working with a project charter. You can download this model on our website. You can give me a call if you want more information. But remember, if you start with a project, ask yourself 10 critical questions. Now we have cascaded the OGSM, or we have created project charters, and this will help us to go further. Now, as said, growth, number one growth driver, comes from reallocating budgets during the year. This means we have to continue working on it. Or OGSM should be agile. Bram, do you have something to tell about agile OGSM?
Indeed, it is. Plans and project charters are important and need to be prepared very well. They are proactive. But how can we make them more agile, more active. We need to make sure they're put into practice. Who knows this gentleman? I didn't. But these two gentlemen, they look familiar, don't they? Well, all three of these gentlemen did the same thing, but actually for a different reason and in a different manner. The first gentleman is Samuel Langley. He had the objective, OGSM did not exist, but his objective, if you want, was to become rich and famous by, he was already thinking, what, by, how? He wanted to become rich and famous by designing the first plane. He sat behind his desk and made very technical drawings that were used in the aviation industry afterwards. But according to Wikipedia, we remember him as the inventor of the bolometer. Right. Then, of course, these two gentlemen come into the picture, and we know them as the brothers Wright. And they had also not seen the OGSM model, of course, because it didn't exist at that time, but their objective was to make people fly by building a plane. Can you see how that is different? They wanted to put the theory into practice. They wanted to build a plane, and were remembered as the ones, not uncontestedly, as the inventors of the plane. How did they work differently than Mr. Langley? Well, they actually, before they even existed, applied some of the Agile methodologies that we know today. They were actually experts in lean. They built a first test plane. They even built a wind tunnel to go and simulate various climatological conditions and measure, as they are practicing, what they were doing. And based on these measurements, they were learning along the way and fixing the plane while flying to improve it and make it even better. You could also say that they actually used some Scrum techniques. They cut the plane into pieces and they had one project team working on improving the wings from what they've learned and then seeing how that process could be used for the team that was actually making a lighter and a more performant motor. So they actually used a plan and made some teams that were doing sprints along the way. So you could say that the Wright brothers were using some Scrum methodology. Important as well in this agile making of your OGSM is to make sure you visualize it. You visualize the process. First of all, to know if you're on the right direction and how far you are from getting to your objective, but also to motivate the people. Try and use a Kanban board or other possible ways of dashboarding and visualizing to say what has been done, what is being done, and what still needs to be done, both in terms of the progress that you're making, the content, as of the process. Then it's important, of course, to have some regular reviews of your implementation of your plan. And again, it can be your Scrum Master, or in our SPICE model, of course, the project leader, who will actually manage the teams who are working on it. And he will govern, on the one hand, the content, what are we doing, but also the process, the way we are doing it. And he's the one who will decide and make sure things get done. If decisions need to be made in terms of content, he will have a procedure ready, or he'll have to make a procedure, for example, our gross model that we use at Business Markers, to decide which projects or sub-projects will be done and which ones will not. He will help you set your priorities on content. And he's also the one that manages the process. And there, of course, he can use our digital OGSM model to see who has done what by when, and where possible reallocation of resources are necessary or extra support is needed. And that, of course, brings us to the very last part of our whole track, and it's about communication. It's important that you implement the plan and communicate both to the rest of your organization and to the outside world of your strategic plans. It can be done by CEO town hall sessions, or it can be done on a more departmental or team level with some group communication sessions. Well, that way is a track we've done all the way from the strategy formulation through the strategy validation and the implementation. It's a whole journey, a journey that we have to do together with falling and getting up again. But as long as your direction is clear, agility needs stability. You can only be agile and go over the hurdles that face you if your plan and your direction is clear. And therefore, don't hesitate to put things into action and move forward. And make sure you keep the end goal in mind.
It's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do. Do you want to work from 9 to 5 and go to work every day? Or do you want to leave a legacy? Do you want to be remembered? Even when you left the company and 5 years later, your name pops up somewhere, that they still remember, that's the guy or girl from blah, point. So do you want to leave a legacy? And that's what you, if you want to do it, that you need to look at how to get and build a plan. Now, how can we help you to leave a legacy? Well, first of all, let's make sure that your plan is not like sitting in a church and listening to a priest. I hope during our session we have been explaining that strategy into action involves a couple of elements. It's good to have a plan, not a Bible, but a one-page plan. And OGSM can help. It's important that we put strategy into action, and we have the 3 phases that we have to run through. We need to put priorities and choose the bears. We have to allocate responsibilities and resources. We can cascade the plan through OGSMs one after another, or go for project charters. And in the end, for an agile follow-up, we can look whether you need Lean, Kanban, or Scrum. And this makes a circle around. It makes sure that the people are engaged and that we allocate resources to what is proving to be the best. Strategy into action. I have to tell you, unfortunately, well, if we do this way, I'm convinced that we are not going to end up in a boring church, but really believe like these people in our future. Let's make it a gospel choir and experience. That's what strategy should look like. Unfortunately, one approach to strategy does not fit all. That's not the case. For every company, it's different. It depends on the stage where you are in. And one of the most frequently heard excuses for not building a plan is, my boss does not believe in strategic plans, or my boss does not have a strategic plan, or he does not want to spend time on it. Well, if that's the case, I recommend you to take your destiny in your own hands. Believe in yourself and have faith. OGSM, or the process around OGSM for strategy and action, can help you to create a contract. A formulated strategy can help you to go to your boss, tell him what you want to do, what you want to reach, and how you want to reach it. And if he agrees, you have a plan for the next 1 to 2, 3 years to work on. So, believe in yourself, take your destiny in your own hands and create your plan. That's how you can do it. So have a one-page plan, you create it together with your team, you make sure it's agile, and you invest 1% of your time. Remember, 20 hours, 2-3 days. And in that period of that 2-3 days, you need to open up your discussions, get insights to formulate it, and you have to close discussions. That's not always easy. And if you want to do it, well, success in 1% of your time can be done by a good moderation, facilitation, or somebody who can guide you through an acceleration of that process. We've done this for hundreds of companies over the last year. So if you're looking for some guidance, an accelerator in your 1% time, you can always give me, Bram, or the other people of Business Markets a call. We've not done it only in Belgium, we've done it across Europe, we've even flew to Asia, up to America to help companies doing it. Now, we've explained a lot. Maybe you have some more questions about it. And if you have questions, you can write them down. Remember, the beginning of the webinar, you can write them down. We will move to our desk, so give us 10 seconds, then we will answer your questions and get into interactivity. Before going into questions, I would like you to invite you also, if you want, to subscribe for the next webinars. We're giving one every 2 months. We've done this already 12 times before this one, and we're going to move on sharing our experience with all of you. Now, give us a couple of moments, 10 seconds. we move to our desk and we're going to answer your questions.
Thank you. And
Thank
see
you.
soon.